Hi friends, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Torey and today we are setting and wrapping up my reading journal for the month of May 2025. I only read 3 books this month, so I won't have too much or too many book review spreads to set up. And since I didn't actually have so many book review spreads to set up this month, I actually ended up writing all of my thoughts and reviews on the pages. I will say, because I'm probably going to be referencing those pages as I talk about those pages, there is a fairly high potential for spoilers in this video. I will do my best not to say anything in the actual voiceover, but I can't guarantee it because if I get off on a little tangent, then I might spew something that you don't want to hear. So if you are not a fond of spoilers like myself, definitely maybe click off or mute that portion of the video when we get to the review pages. So a couple of things that I will be doing before I start setting up my pages. I've got my book covers printed out here. I normally print all of my book covers in 3 sizes. I have a very, very small size, which is a 1/4 of an inch wide by 1.15 inches tall that I use for my year of covers. So basically every book that I've read for the entire year, I will put on a spread just because I really like the way that it looks at the end of the year. I also put a 1-inch wide book cover. I don't know how tall that ends up being. I usually just go 1 inch wide. Book cover at the very beginning of my setup on my title page and my visual time to read page. Depending on how many books I read, I'll either put it over both of them or just on my actual cover. And I also like to include a book cover on my actual review pages as well. So it might be a little excessive to some people, but I just really love looking at book covers. So I don't mind printing so many out each month to actually be able to see them on multiple pages. I also eventually will make a spread in this book to house all of my favorite book covers for the year. Basically any book cover that I have just loved looking at, I will print out again and just add it to a favorite book covers spread. I have not actually set that up yet, so if you want to see me set that up, let me know down in the comments below. As I was flipping back to the beginning pages of my journal to add those mini book covers to my books read this year, like book cover page, I am going to also fill out my alphabet challenge as well. I had a couple of books that I did not end up adding just yet to this page, and also a book that I hadn't actually added that I was currently reading. So I'm making a few updates to the alphabet page, as well as my 2025 books read list. And essentially, since I am doing all of my book reviews and wrap-ups and setups in the same video every month now, I have found it very, very helpful to have this like overall list of all of the books that I have read for the whole year so that I can write down the cover, start date, end date, how I read the book, and the end rating that I gave it. And I will just reference back to that at whenever I go and do the book review pages. So for my primary decoration this month, I have this paper here that I've printed out on sticker paper. And this is actually something that I drew up myself in my Procreate app. And I actually drew it up to be a wallpaper for my phone because I had still had like a winter one, probably until about like the middle of last month. And my favorite color is green, and I just really loved the way that this turned out. So this is now my phone wallpaper, and I also printed out the image that I created so that I could use it in my reading journal as well. This will also show up in my week in the life too, because I did this during week in the life, so the week of June 2nd. And I am using this as like my project for the day. So this image will show up in my week in the life album as well. So I am just ripping that sticker paper up and I'm going to place it on either corner of my pages here. This first page is going to be my May cover page, and the page on the right is going to be my visual time to read spread. I do have some Ali Edwards stamps pulled out. I don't know specifically what they're called, and I don't know if they're available any longer, but I will double check for you. And if they are, I will link them down in the description box below. But these came out, or at least one of them came out with the One Little Word collection this year. And then I think the other one was part of the Week in the Life release, which was the exact same font stamp, but like much, much smaller. And I love having the exact same font in multiple different sizes because then I can use it for multiple different things. So immediately I had to buy it. So I am using both of those stamp sets in this setup today, but only using them basically for the fonts. So I did say earlier that I read 3 books this month. So the 3 books that I read were King of the Dark by Ariana Nash. This one I started in April and finished at the very beginning of May. I read Fragile Sanctuary by Cowles and The Inheritance Games by Jennifer Lynn Barnes. So this is actually quite a few less books than I normally read. I think probably my average amount of books read is like 6. Just in general, 5 to 6 books I think I usually read each month. But I read The Inheritance Games as a physical book. And for some reason, physical books take me so much longer to read. And I'll tell you right now why I think that is. I think it's because when I read, I like to read laying down. If I'm reading a physical book, though, I feel in my soul that I have to turn over every single time I turn a page. So like if I'm reading one page, I basically like to lay the open part of the book that I'm not reading on the bed and then have the part that I'm reading like face to face with me. So every time I turn a page, I feel like I have to roll over so I can have the book in that position. And it's probably ridiculous. Let me know if you do this as well. Because once I got my e-reading device, my Kindle, I didn't have to do that anymore. Basically any e-reading device I've ever had, because I had a Nook at one point. I use my iPad sometimes. I don't have to flip over in order for the page to be in the exact same position. I can just switch the pages. So because I have to do that when I read a physical book, it makes me tired of reading a lot faster because I'm constantly flipping. I'm sure you can understand. So I just don't read as much in one particular time as I normally would for an ebook or an audiobook or however I'm reading at that time that's outside of an actual physical book. So because of that, I think I spent 2 full weeks reading The Inheritance Games, and I had so much fun reading this book that I just know if I read it in a different way, I probably would have finished it in 2 days. So yeah, that took up most of my months, and I didn't read much else outside of that. I also then started reading The Great Expectations in a physical format as well, immediately after The Inheritance Games. So I just really did not set myself up to have a very strong reading month. But I'm not upset about it because I did end up really liking most of the books that I read this month. So I ended up using that alphabet stamp to just stamp May directly above each of my book titles. And then I used some craft star rating stickers to place underneath each book cover. And these are stickers that I have made myself. So they're not, well, they might be available somewhere, but not these specific ones are available that I have found because I've not actually looked for them. But I really love the craft paper because sometimes I feel like I need an extra color or something to kind of break up. Like I've got a lot of green on this page. So I felt like the craft paper really helped break some of that green up, as opposed to me using like my white star ratings like I normally would do. So I got a little bit stuck here and couldn't figure out what I wanted to do next. So I am filling in the star ratings that I gave each book. For King of the Dark, I gave that 4 stars. Fragile Sanctuary, I gave 3.5 stars. And the Inheritance Games, I gave 4 stars as well. Then I'm going to move on to the calendar that I have drawn out here and just add in all of the dates. And I will be doing something a little bit differently this month than I have done in previous months. Normally, for the days that are not actually a part of that month, I will use a Pigma Micron in 005, so I have a really, really thin line. But instead of going with the thin line, I'm actually using my Tombow Furonosuke hard tip brush pen, and I'm using that marker to add the grid pattern that I've been adding into my monthly calendars. And it's the exact same thing that I've been doing since basically January, because I believe I've been doing this for the entire year so far, but it looks so different. So let me know what you think about that. I'm going to use the smaller alphabet stamp that it's basically a small portion of this very large Week in the Life stamp. And I'm going to stamp out visual. Once I stamped out visual though, I realized that this alphabet stamp is a little bit too like wide to fit visual time to read across, so that it's basically within the width of the calendar is what I wanted it to look like. So I'll end up stamping out the word visual, and then I'm going to take that Tombow Furonosuke brush pen, and I'm just going to write time to read in my own just handwriting. As I'm getting this stamped and written out, I would love to know what books you read for the month of May down in the comments below, especially if we have read any of the same books for this month. I think some of these books that I read have been a little bit older releases, so I'm not sure if anybody would have read either of any of those, but let me know down in the comments what books you read for the month of May. And since we are near at the end of June, what was your favorite book for June as well? If I had to pick a favorite book for May, I don't know what I would pick. I think that both King of the Dark and the Inheritance Games I loved equally. I did give them both 4 stars, so that makes sense. But I don't know if I would pick one over the other. They were very different, but I had a good time with both of them. And King of the Dark raised a lot of actual emotion from me. Like, I can't get too much into detail about it because it would be all of the spoilers, but I did at one point like throw my Kindle down almost and look at my husband and like start shouting at him at something that I thought was going to happen, and he was looking at me like I was psychotic. So like that one pulled out a lot of like real life emotion from me. But I just had so much fun reading the Inheritance Game. So I don't know. If you've read any of these books also, let me know what you thought of them, please. I don't remember what I was doing here. Maybe I was flipping through each of my monthly setups to show my husband. I do that a lot. I feel like I do that in almost every single video that he happens to walk up while I'm recording. So it's probably not even very uncommon of a thing to happen at this point. But yeah, so I added 3 colors, a green and 2 kind of beigey tan shades to mark off all of the books that I read this month. I didn't have any books overlap, and I only completed 3 books for the month and then started Great Expectations, which is that final green row. But I won't include that unless I've actually finished the book during the month that I'm actually recording. I'm moving on now to do my challenge page and my stats page. And I feel like my voice sounds really, really weird, like very scratchy and dry. So I am sorry if it's uncomfortable. You can always turn on like the auto captions and just mute me if I sound that terrible. But again, I apologize because I don't know what's going on with my voice right now. But there's not really anything I can do to fix it. I am using the exact same papers that I used on that first page, but I'm going to place them in a little bit different of spots this time. I'm still going to go opposite of each pages. I guess actually, no, I'm not placing them really in that different of spots at all. I'm just swapping where they are. So it's going to be at the top of the left-hand page and the bottom of the right-hand page. And I'm doing a straight line of the patterned paper across instead of tearing it at an angle. So it is a little bit different, but not really that much different than how I did it at the first page. And I will then stamp out the word challenge. You'll see me flip back to previous months to make sure that I figure out what the actual middle of the word is, because I want that one to be centered on my challenge page. And I'm just terrible at spelling things in my head or spelling things backwards. So I know I already have it in here, so I'm just going to flip back and reference what I've already done. And then I will fully work on my stats page. I don't know what prompted me to do it this way, to stamp out challenge and then just complete the stats page instead of completing the challenge page. Maybe because I wasn't 100% sure how I wanted to lay out the challenge page at this point in the recording process. I don't really know. Who knows? But that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to stamp out challenge and then just fully move on to the stats page. Some of the letters of challenge didn't really stamp to my liking, so I'm going to also grab my Tombow Fudenosuke brush pen, and I'm just going to add in a little bit more thickness and fill in some of the spots that didn't stamp 100% in that word challenge, and then I will move on to my actual stats page. Last month, I created these circle stickers that I added a dot to the very center of, but the dot is very, very small. If you look hard enough on camera, you might be able to see them before I actually color them in. But I created these because I was really just sick of drawing my own pie graphs, and I've been loving them. And that dot in the center gives me a really good idea of where I need to draw the like pie graph lines, because not all pie graphs are going to be 100% or straight down the middle, right? So I've got a very small dot in the middle of all of these, and I will use that as my center point of the pie graph. And I'm going to be pulling off the pages that I read, the pace I believe that I read them in, and then the format that I read each book in for this month. Since I only read 3 books, and I actually read all 3 of them in different formats, the details for like format are going to be very like equal. And then they all ended up being the exact same like page range, which I think is 300 to 499, I think is what Storygraph separates them as. And then I had one fast-paced book and 2 medium-paced books. But then I read 1 digital book solely, which was King of the Dark. Fragile Sanctuary, I cannot speak today, I'm so sorry. Fragile Sanctuary was an immersive read, so I read that in both digital and audio formats simultaneously. And then the Inheritance Games was a physical book. So I am drawing out all of my lines from my my pie graph, and then I'm just going to color those in with the same markers that I used at the very beginning of this setup for my visual time to read calendar. Once I've got that done, I'm going to add 3 more sections directly to the left of my pie graphs, where I will document the total number of books that I read for the month, the total number of pages that I read for the month, as well as my average rating. And then I will stamp out my title for the page, which is just going to say stats, right underneath or like right above where my patterned paper is and underneath my books, pages, and stats sections. So it'll be nestled in there very nicely. I will use just a regular Pigma Micron pen. I think I'm using 01 for this setup, and just title in all of my actual pie graph sections as well. So all of the bottom ones, all of the formats, those are all 33%, and I listed those exactly as I said. So I actually think I wrote print on here, which I found very weird because I don't usually use that word, but you know, here we are. Print, digital, and immersive. And then the pages, I believe, again, were actually, I've got my book in front of me. 300 to 499 was 100% of the books that I read. And then I had 33% that were fast-paced, 69% that were medium-paced. And then I will stamp in the word stats. I'm just kind of using my ruler here to find the middle of that small portion of page that I have left. And I'm going to attempt to stamp that as close to the middle of this blank section as possible. And then I will actually stamp out all of the remaining stats that I have using those Ali Edwards stamp sets. So for the books that I read a total of 3 books. The amount of pages that I read last month were 1,127 pages, and my average rating was 3.83 stars. So while I am getting this one done, I'm going to stop talking for a minute and drink some water. I'm not sure if you've noticed, but there are no pencil lines on any of the pages that I'm setting up this month, which means I did absolutely no planning before I came in and started working on these pages. I have several times in this video just been sitting for a moment, like tapping my pen on the table, which is me basically trying to figure out what the heck I'm gonna do. We are now finally working on my challenge page, and what I ultimately decided to do for this one was to just take these book covers that I already had printed out and draw some dots around the edges of each books and draw large rectangles. And I believe that I did this in a previous month as well, so it's not a new kind of method to track this. I'm gonna check. I think I did this in maybe February. Yes, I did this in February as well. I didn't just draw out the lines, but I just did 4 rectangular boxes where I wrote the actual prompt for the challenge at the top and then the name of the book underneath that. So the challenge prompts that I ended up doing for the month of May were a book from your physical TBR, and then I think that there was like a secondary note on there about like something that's been on your TBR for longer than 2 years and has just been sitting, but a physical book, which I ended up using the inheritance games for because I loved the cover of this book and I bought it ages ago, but it's literally just been sitting on my shelf for I can't even tell you how long at this point. The second prompt was a book recommended by a friend, and I did shorten these prompts a little bit so that they would fit better on my actual page, but I just took out like words like the or things like that just to make them a little bit shorter. The third prompt was a classic, and the fourth prompt was a nonfiction book. So any prompt that I did complete, I am kind of doing a grid pattern in the Tombow 990 pen. If I didn't complete it at all, I used the Ali Edwards stamp set and just stamped an X there, kind of like a no, like I didn't do that one. And then because I did start reading a classic for the classic prompt, I did write down there that I started Great Expectations, but I didn't finish it. So the background of that one is not actually colored in. And I thought that this was a good way to kind of show that I did make an effort for that third prompt. I just didn't finish the book because it was a physical book, and I'm super, super slow when it comes to reading physical books, as I have already shared. We're done with those, and we are going to jump right into my review pages. Since I only read 3 books, I decided to put all 3 book reviews on these 2 pages, this full spread right here. So I am just using the book covers and kind of laying them out in a distance that feels good. I didn't measure anything, but I just kind of was like, okay, yeah, this feels good. And I counted some squares to try and make them as even as possible. I don't think that they are as even as they could be, but that's fine. I am going to end up placing the review for The Fragile Sanctuary over the binding of the book. So over that center fold of the 2 pages, I'll end up putting my whole review for that one over that area. I'm essentially going to be blocking out a section to place each of the book covers in. And for those sections, I'm using my Tombow 990 and my Tombow N89 brush pens. I'm coloring the 2 top sections with the 990, and then the bottom section that's going to hold the Fragile Sanctuary is in the N98. Then when I come back in and I do my every other row highlights to place the book details on, so title, author, format, and genre are my primary ones usually, I'm going to alternate, and I will do the N98 underneath the 990 and then vice versa. That's a lot of numbers that I just said, so hopefully that makes sense. Again, I am doing it on the screen though, so hopefully the visual representation makes it a little bit less confusing than me just kind of spewing off Tombow numbers. I didn't actually put the grid portion in the N98 color, the one that I'm doing now. So I'm just adding that back in. And then I decide to place each of the book covers right in the center of each section. When I had first considered doing it, I was going to do them either right on the right side or the left side or something like that. But I thought it looked better to put them in the middle, which means that I will need to cut my book cover for Fragile Sanctuary 3/4 of the way over. I don't normally like doing this, but I also don't like sticking stickers over the center of my notebook because that really messes with the structure of the notebook, and I try to avoid that at all costs. So I think it looks fine. I don't think it's super, super noticeable that I cut the book cover. So let me know what you think about that in the comments. I will also pull out some of the paper that I've been using, some of the scraps of this patterned paper that I made. I'm going to place one directly across the middle of the page and do the same thing. I'm just going to cut that in half wherever it's going to fall over the center of the book. And then I'll place a small piece at the bottom left-hand corner and the bottom right-hand corner as well. After I've got that all done, I will do my every other line highlights for the book details. And then I will add star rating stickers as well. I think I do the star rating stickers first. I managed to do and complete so much in this video, but I didn't fill in my star ratings on this page. So I still have to do that. I'm looking at it right now and I'm like, oh, I didn't even color those star ratings in. So it's kind of funny to me that I managed to complete so much in this video, but that's the one thing I didn't complete, especially because it's one of the easiest things to do. But here we are. I'll figure that out and do it eventually. I mean, I already have the ratings. I just need to do it. So whatever. So let's start chit-chatting about the books that I read. I don't know how much I'll be able to share. I really hope I don't give a bunch of spoilers, and I'm so sorry in advance if I do. Please know that it's not intentional. So the first book that I read was called King of the Dark. It was by Ariana Nash. I considered this to be a romantasy, and it is a digital book. I'm actually going to pull out my phone and look up the synopsis. Let me do that. So the main character of King of Dark is Nico, and he is an ex-soldier who is, at the very beginning of the book, approached by a prince who's trying to basically buy his loyalty to do something for him. When he says no, he ends up being like captured by the prince's guards and like taken to the castle. There is then kind of something going on that the prince needs him to figure out, like who is responsible for it. And it's basically just them going through the book, like trying to figure out like what's going on and who is the culprit and blah, 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 blah. I won't say too much more because like I felt very strongly about like especially like the plot twist of this one. And I know that I will fully give everything away. If you don't want to know, do not read what I write on the paper as I go in and fill this in. It was very fun though. I really, really liked it. It is a male book. It's for 18 up. There's trigger warnings, and then like the very bottom like description of the book, I'll read that because it doesn't really give any details about the books. It says King of the Dark is the first book in the slow burn enemies to lovers Princess Assassin series. So this is part of the Princess Assassin. This is book 1. It's a gay Game of Thrones with a hint of The Witcher thrown in. There are triggers. And I will let you look up your own trigger warnings, but definitely check those before you read it. I didn't find anything too awful, but you know, everybody's different. So definitely look up your trigger warnings. I liked it, and it definitely raised a lot of emotions in me. So if you read it, I would love to know what you think about it. Yeah. So yeah, the next one that I read was part of the challenge. It was a book recommended to me by a friend, and I don't think I said this book when I went over the challenge pages, but it was Fragile Sanctuary. And this is like a mystery romance, I think. I'm going to pull that up too as well. Again, this one, definitely don't read anything that I write on the page because it will literally spoil the whole book. Like, quite literally. So this is Fragile Sanctuary. It was Sparrow Falls, book number 1. And it's essentially about a girl whose house gets like burned down when she's like fairly young, and then she kind of gets adopted by her friend's parents. At the point that the book's like, I don't even know what I'm saying. At the very beginning of the book, she's like in her teenage years when her house gets burned down, and it's very emotional. I was very shocked at how emotional it was right from the jump. But then we kind of skip fast forward to where she's like in her like mid-adult years or something like that. And things start happening, and they're trying to figure out like who the culprit is. So it is like a romantic suspense kind of book. I had written down in here like mystery romance, which is kind of the same thing, I guess. Probably not. But when I was thinking back on it, I was like, yeah, it was kind of like a mystery. But it is noted on Goodreads as romantic suspense. So when I'm trying so hard not to spoil things, so I'm going to stop talking about that. But this one was also like decently good. I liked it. It kept me guessing. I did absolutely had no idea who the culprit was. And I'm usually very good about guessing the culprits in situations like these kind of books. And I did not get it at all. So that in and of itself was like an immediate like 3 stars for me, because like I wasn't able to guess it. And I gave this one 3.5 stars, probably because I wasn't able to guess the culprit, honestly. The last book that I read was The Inheritance Games. This was by Jennifer Lynn Barnes. It's a young adult book, and I read this physically. And I had so much fun with this book. I think that this one is a fairly popular book. I think most of us have heard of it at the very least. Maybe not read it, but at least heard of it. Every single time I made an update in my reading companion notebook, which is a small notebook that I use throughout the month while I'm actually reading and kind of make notes on the books and what percent of the book I'm at, I started every single entry with, I am having so much fun. So I really, really liked this book. My favorite character is Jameson. I love his personality. And it kept me guessing. This one I think is like YA mystery, maybe? I don't know. I should look that up too. Yes, this one actually has mystery tags, unlike Fragile Sanctuary, who just has suspense tags. But like, I enjoyed the puzzles. I did read some reviews after I finished it that where some people said like the puzzles were stupid, or they weren't like as good as they could have been. But I had a lot of fun. I liked the puzzles. But that's it. I gave this one 4 stars. Again, let me know if you've read any of these books, and let's kind of flip through all of my finished pages for today. That's all I have to share for you today. Thank you so much for joining me. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day, and I hope to see you in my next video. Bye!